content covered may be graphic in nature. Viewer discretion is advised.
Witchcraft.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely it's really just I love stories like this because it's someone scared to death.
Yeah, that's a real thing. Just there are countless horror stories.
People that you shouldn't fuck with.
Right, and the
JFK assassination all
to real.
From the mistake on the lake, deep within the great American Rust Belt, you're in the right place at the right time. This is T3TV. I'm your host, John Budzinski, alongside Steve Buddha Gibson.
What's up?
And Natalie Buddha Gibson.
What's up?
All right, well, I'm getting a little bit of an echo here, and I'm not sure necessarily where that's coming from, so, but we'll go on with this. Let me see here. Dial something back. Okay. So yeah, what's new with you guys? Anything new, Buddha, this week?
Not too much. It's just the usual week after the holiday where it's not quite as long, but it feels twice as long.
Right. Yeah, that's funny you should mention that, especially like when the holiday's on a Sunday and then it's observed on a Monday. Did you have to work on Monday or no?
I did not work Monday.
Yeah, neither did I. And but I will say, like, also this heat and humidity has been just insane. And it can't make up its mind. It either wants to rain or it wants to be sunny, but it keeps dialing back and forth between the two. So, which has also not helped the humidity because then it's just a bunch of water boiling in the air. So
I hate when it's this hot.
Yeah, it's pretty.
I hate it.
I'm not a fan of it either. And, like growing up as a kid, it didn't bother me all that much. But being an adult, I just don't like dealing with it anymore. So
I feel like everybody always feels like, oh, this shit wasn't bad when I was a kid. But I bet when I was a kid, it was still fucking hot.
Oh, yeah. Think about all the days that we spent skating and things like that. And so it was all cured with a Dairyman's iced tea.
A boo. A boo-boo.
That is it. So
it's actually really funny. I was working with this dude last week or whatever, and he's like 20, 21 years old, and he reminded me of like us because he just shows up, like pretty much kind of eats garbage and then has just like a giant jug of iced tea.
Is he like a not like a temporary help, but like
no, he's just he works with somebody else I know.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm trying to find where I'm getting all of this. Like I'm getting a slight bit of I think it's there. Buddha, can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I think it's just me. Okay.
Yeah, I don't hear anything.
Yeah. Well, I hear like a delay of me. Hold on a second. I'm trying to fix the
way to be ill prepared, John.
No, it was working fine. I think it. Well, now it's gone. Well, it's a little there. All right. I'm just gonna turn it down. Pretend like it doesn't exist. Hopefully, it's not on the show. Okay. So Natalie, obviously, Buddha's mentioned you on the show plenty of times. Mistress or wife? Which of the two?
That would be wife, but I think Rady tries to call himself the mistress. He's always our third wheel.
Oh, yes. Good old Dan. Dan is still on sabbatical, and you're in the Dan chair tonight, so the wife is present. Buddha, behave yourself.
Dan is like, oh, I told you she tries to be me. She can't be me.
Listen, we went one whole show without a Rady joke, and
that's not a joke. That's an observation.
I'm sticking to my guns. But anyway, okay. So how did you meet Buddha? If you want to get into that, or we can skip that and just get into news. You tell me.
Well, I'm sure anybody who has me on Facebook is probably sick of the story because I only say it every year when I make our little anniversary post. But I met him at the bank. I was a bank teller, he was a customer, and I thought he was really cute. And we used to talk about music all the time. And this was before I realized that the only thing he listens to is horns because he kind of played me. He had a Motley Crue shirt on like the first time I met him.
Yeah, he's totally
Yeah, and he had a Motley Crue shirt, and then like I told him I was going to this Motley Crue concert, and here I find out later down the line that Rob Taglarina, he was the one that like talked him into going to this concert because he knew that I would be there. And then I find out years down the line that he doesn't even like Motley Crue. So I'm like, oh, so you like put on a show just to impress me, basically. But
I
it was
think he
really
likes
cute,
Motley
like,
Crue. I
you know,
think he's just
looking back
pulling
at
the
it.
leg. So
I think
I
if
think
you haven't
he
noticed by
likes their
now,
old
I literally
stuff.
grab.
what was that, Buddha?
Oh, I was gonna say I think that she's noticed by now that I don't really coordinate what I wear. I just reach in and grab, and whatever I grab, that's what I'm wearing.
No, he literally, I mean, I'm sure you know, he wears the same two outfits everywhere. We were in Florida, and I was like, okay, let's go out to dinner. Like, it'll be like a nice like dinner night. We didn't go anywhere super fancy, but I was wearing a dress. He comes out wearing that fucking Hard Rock shirt that he wears everywhere.
Not the loudness shirt.
Not the loudness. It was the Hard Rock Tijuana shirt, and it's like he wears that. That's, I always know what he's gonna wear. It's either that shirt or the loudness.
The loudness is a classic. We have gone many places, and there was two shirts that Buddha had in his collection. One was the loudness shirt, and the other one was the Dio shirt. Yeah, everywhere we go, somebody would be singing "Holy Diver" to Buddha, like out of nowhere. We were at the baseball game, which again, I was telling Shannon the other day, like I think the last time I was at an Indians game was with you and Ross. And
Wow,
and
that
Shannon's
was
like,
a long time ago.
She's like, well, Buddha went to an Indians game. I was like, well, you just went with the flow. But then I remember, like, you wore the Holy Diver shirt that night, or the Dio shirt, and somebody just out of nowhere started singing Holy Diver to you.
Yeah. Dude, we were at the Columbus Zoo, and I had the loudness shirt on, and some random dude, like, with his kid came up to me, and he was like, oh, man, like, I love that band. And I was like, why?
And then he was like, well, why are you wearing the shirt?
Right?
That's funny. But yeah, so all right, well, let's get into some news. You guys ready?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, so this week, I don't know if you guys saw this in the major headlines, but Microsoft they pushed a an update, and it's a huge security flaw that could have major repercussions. This one's out of CNN Business, but Microsoft's latest security vulnerability could have a lingering impact on both consumers and businesses at a time when around the world are already high on alert for cyber attacks. Researchers at security firm Sangfor recently found a Windows vulnerability called Print Nightmare that could allow hackers to remotely gain access to the operating system and install programs, view and delete data, or even create new user accounts with full user rights. The firm accidentally leaked instructions on how the flaw could be exploited by hackers, exacerbating the need for Windows users to update their systems immediately. Here's what you should know about how to address it. Microsoft is urging all Windows users to install an update that affects the Windows Print Spooler service, which allows multiple users to access the printer. The company has already rolled out fixes for Windows 10, 8, and 7, and some server versions. Microsoft ended support for Windows 7 last year, so the decision to push an update on that software highlights the severity of the Print Nightmare flaw. Again, here's why I think, and I don't know about how you guys feel about this, but I feel like, and Buddha, you might remember, there used to be years between updates. I mean, there might be little minor updates here and there, but I feel like every year, like, we have to get a new OS, or like there's just some major overhaul, especially like with Apple. I mean, they're putting out a new version of the OS every single year. I don't know if this, like, why is it necessary to do that? It feels like, and then after every release, it's like a mountain of time before you can get back to like everything working right before the cutover.
I think like part of it is just the tech world in general, which is just moving at such a rapid pace. Everybody wants to have the newest cutting edge technology. But I always use this example with video games where nothing has to be done and ready. It just has to be released.
Yeah.
And I don't understand that. But it's honestly, it's because people are fucking stupid and people are fucking impatient. Like why do you have to have, like, they release a new iPhone like every year, right?
Yeah.
But what changes? You know what I mean? Like, it's virtually the same thing. I mean, like little small tweaks here and there, but you can't tell me that the one from last year and the one to this year are like astronomically different.
No, typically, and they're also releasing value versions almost every year as well, where it's like you're getting, last year or 2 years ago, top of the line processing in like a cheaper shell. Maybe it's plastic with, different colors, but it's a way to get somebody in, but not necessarily give them the best hardware.
But like, why? Like, especially with video games, like they pump games up, so heavily, and they're just like promoted and promoted and promoted. And damn well when it gets released, it's not going to be, there's going to have bugs, and they're going to claim that, oh yeah, we'll just get it with a patch. And then they never do, especially if the game flops upon release, then they just go, well, we're not even going to patch shit. Like, who cares? Now if you're lucky enough and you get a game that lasts a long time, maybe 6 months later, you might get those issues fixed. But why? Like, why is that acceptable?
And you make a good point too. Like, I was talking to somebody about this the other day. Remember when a movie had a release date, it had a release date. And I feel like nowadays movies, they constantly have the release date pushed back. Nothing ever gets pushed up. And it's almost the exact opposite of video games, where we're seeing like, okay, if I understand correctly, the last Ghostbusters movie, the one that's supposed to come out this year, was already in the canon, ready to go. And they didn't release it for obvious reasons, like with the pandemic, but it's like, you look at a movie that, like Black Widow, that another thing was in the can ready to go, and they didn't release it because of the pandemic. I guess what I'm trying to say is like, the deadlines don't mean anything anymore, I think. And so whether it's video games or movies, the needle is always allowed to be moved now. And back, in the 80s, it has to be perfect, and you only get, and you don't miss your deadline. So,
well, they even did that with Stranger Things. It was originally supposed to come out, I think, in August, and then they said December, and now I'm hearing that it's not coming out until 2022. So like you said, it's like it doesn't even matter if there's a deadline. If they're not ready, they're just going to push it back. But especially with video games, it seems like no matter how many times they push it back, nothing is ever perfect. I mean, I play Sims regularly, and they'll always release new game packs and like new updates, but they still don't fix all the issues. And every time there's a new pack, there's a whole new set of bugs and glitches.
Yeah, it's crazy. I just don't, I don't understand. Fix it, get it right, and release it when you say you're going to. Like, how much, okay, so even if like theaters started opening back up in April, right? Did it really need to wait until November for like Ghostbusters? I don't know. I don't know.
But don't you kind of feel like...
Uh-oh. Screen lock? Buddha?
Oh, yeah, I think this... Okay, am I back?
Yep.
Oh, sorry. Okay. I don't know how it locked because I didn't have it set to that. But anyway, I was going to say, don't you feel like movie theaters are going to eventually become obsolete, though?
I mean, yeah, but I think there's still...
I feel like...
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I feel like most people, they just want to wait until it's on Netflix and just watch it at home. I don't really know a lot of people that go running to the theaters anymore.
That's definitely like a cult thing, though. Like, not, I don't mean that in a weird way. I mean, like there's like the cult following for Star Wars. There's, all of that stuff. I think is always going to have some type of physical outlet, because I mean that's like an experience for people to go to the theaters to see those movies. Whereas like someone like me, like I'm pretty fucking reclusive when it comes to that shit. Like, I don't want to go to a theater. I don't want to pay $30 for fucking 2 tickets if they're even that cheap.
I think the
You
last
know-
movie you and I went and saw in the theater, Buddha, was The Condemned with Stone Cold.
Oh my god, dude.
That
yeah,
or,
I mean,
or Rambo, I think, was shortly after that as well.
Did we? Yeah,
Well,
one of the two.
Well, I told you I want to see Black Widow in theaters, and you said no.
Yeah, because not only does it look terrible, but I just don't want to go to the theater.
I still enjoy seeing a movie on the theater, and I'm really sad that I couldn't see the third Bill and Ted released in the theater. But I will say, it was pretty cool. Like, once it was released at midnight to the public, I mean, I hit refresh on my Apple TV and it started playing. So I guess like I like both sides of it, but I do like it's like a concert to me where it's fun to enjoy something with a group of people. But I went to the Indians game on Saturday, and that's
I
the
think-
biggest crowd I've seen in over a year. And I'm like, maybe I wasn't ready to be around.
Was it pretty
all these
packed?
people. Oh man, yeah, definitely. I mean, the upper level, like the 500 section, was not really full. I think it was still closed, but I mean, there was a lot of people downtown.
See, like I think with the theaters though, like you're actually starting to see, or have been for the past several years, of like the shift from quantity to quality, where like how everyone's getting like the recliner seats, the leather seats, like whereas like back then they would just jam pack as many seats in there as possible. I think they've caught on to the fact that not as many people are going, so they need to do something to keep the people that are going to go to keep coming, but then they just jack the prices way up because there's going to be less of them.
Right. And honestly, I didn't mind that. Wider seat, recliner, cup holder. I mean, the cup holder was already there, but
I mean, do you realistically think it's worth having to spend, almost like $20 a ticket?
I love the big screen. I love the sound. I love, all the just being there and it being loud. Like, it was crazy watching like the final Avengers movie in theater, like, and just being there as part of that. And except for the guy that started snoring behind me when Black Widow sacrificed herself, whole theater is dead silent, and this guy's like, I'm like, will somebody wake him up? All right, let's move on. All right, so this one's out of let's see, ScienceAlert.com. Kepler seems to have detected a bunch of rogue planets drifting through the galaxy. It says when a star is born, the leftover dust and gas in the cloud form which it formed doesn't just sit there. It clumps together, forming cosmic objects, asteroids and comets and meteors, and yes, exoplanets. A lot of ands in there, no commas. We've detected many of these exoplanets in orbit around alien stars in the Milky Way, but not all exoplanets stay put. Some get gravitationally, kicked away from their parent star to wander the galaxy cold and alone. These are less easy to detect, but are careful combing through data from NASA's Planet Hunting Kepler Space Telescope. Astronomers think they've found some. And so, kind of interesting to think, like, okay, while in the 9 planets that are in this solar system are now 8 because they got rid of Pluto, they're able to find, like, exoplanets that are not necessarily hung within a star.
What is an exoplanet?
I guess it's bigger than an asteroid. So it's all this remnants of dust and gas that, clump together and are not, they don't fit the asteroid category.
Huh.
So, all right, moving on. Okay, here's an interesting article. And, have you ever noticed, like, and my brain does this all the time, but inanimate objects that, like, resemble faces in them? Have you ever noticed anything like that?
Like how the lady sold bread, which was like the portrait of Jesus on eBay?
No. Well, I mean, you could, but yeah, it says not only do we see faces in everyday objects, but our brains process them for emotional expression. It's so commonplace that we give it barely a second thought, but our human brains are hardwired to see human faces where there are none, in objects such as the moon, toys, plastic bottles, tree trunks, vacuum cleaners. Some have even seen an image, and imagined Jesus in cheese or on a toast. So yeah, but like, have you guys ever like looked at like an object? Like sometimes if you look at the front of a car, you're like, oh, I could see where like the headlights are, you know.
Yeah,
set
like you see how people put like the mustache and shit on their car, or the eyelashes.
Oh, dude, the eyelashes are the worst.
I mean, I've had that happen. Sometimes if I look at like wood, you know how you see like the designs in the wood, it's like you could see a face. Does anybody else see that, or am I just weird?
No. It also puts in here the facial recognition response happens lightning fast in the brain within a few hundred milliseconds. We know these objects are not truly faces, yet a perception of a face lingers. We end up with something strange, a parallel experience that it is both a compelling face and an object, two things at once. The first impression of a face does not give way to the second perception of an object. This error is known as a face pareidolia. It is such a common occurrence that we accept the notion of detecting faces in objects as normal, but humans do not experience this cognitive process as strongly for other phenomena. But yeah, so it is weird. Like, I know you see like shapes in clouds or whatnot, but yeah, I've definitely, there's a picture on here too that's kind of funny where it's it looks like a heater, and it's got like the two knobs for like heat level and fan, and then there's like a little curve around the front of it for like something, but it looks like a smiling face. It's kind of crazy. Or where people will paint garbage cans where like the hole is the mouth and there's two eyes there. I don't know. It's always been kind of interesting. I'm like, why does my brain seem to go there and detect a face? But
do you mean like when you see a face when people carve a face in pumpkins?
Moving on. All right. And then Buddha, this one's for you. This one's out of UPI.com. A Florida man taking a walk on the beach found a 4-inch tooth from a prehistoric megalodon shark just 3 weeks after he found a smaller tooth from the same species on the same beach. Jacob Danner says he was walking on Fernandina Beach on Thursday morning after Tropical Storm Elsa swept through the area, which he came across the 4-inch tooth. Danner said he found the tooth near where he found a 3-inch megalodon tooth 3 weeks earlier. Jim Gleisinger, an associate biology professor at the University of North Florida, said the first tooth Danner discovered could be millions of years old. He said the tooth discoveries can tell researchers a lot about an extinct species. The megalodon fossils that have been observed usually run around 30 feet in length or so. So, yeah, crazy.
How do you just randomly stumble across a prehistoric tooth?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Well, the hurricane must have kicked up something. There might be a skeleton that might wash up on shore here pretty soon or something.
Yeah, actually, that shit is pretty crazy when all the wild shit gets washed up from like the oceans and whatnot. But I find it pretty crazy when people are like out dicking around in the woods and they're like, oh, I was running and I tripped, and then they're like, there's a fucking dinosaur here. Like, how does that stuff become, like, how was it buried so shallow, or how did it get uncovered if it's like an undisturbed area?
Yeah, it's a good point too. Like, if you think about it, yeah, it wasn't disturbed. It's been there for millions of years, hundreds of thousands of years. I wonder if there's any point on like the North American continent that hasn't been like stepped on.
Oh, for sure. There has to be, dude. Just America alone is massive.
That's what I'm saying. But like, is there any country that exists right now where there hasn't been, activity on it?
Well, there's literally there's an island that still has like a prehistoric tribe that you can't even enter because they're so like disconnected from what the world is like now. I would have to Google and see what it is, but people have been actually like chased out. Like, there was a video that I found online a long time ago where there was like this helicopter like over the area and they were throwing spears at the helicopter.
Yeah, there was some dude, it's probably the same island, some dude that like shipwrecked on it and they fucking murdered him.
Poor guy. Hey, look, can you give me a hand?
Don't do stupid shit.
Well, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, dude, oh man, I don't remember the dude's name.
Yeah, he looks fucking stupid.
Yeah, he probably does. Looks a little dumber now. I wish I could remember the dude's name. It was someone that they thought like an explorer or whatever, and they thought that he was like lost either in I think it was a plane crash, and then like these pictures surfaced of like
Yeah, it was Rockefeller.
yeah,
one of the
yeah, that's who it
Rockefellers.
was.
Yeah,
It was.
yeah.
Yeah, and you saw the pictures and they're like, now there's a white guy, and he's like, it's possible that he assimilated in with this tribe.
Yeah.
Was it a plane crash? Is that what it was?
He went disappearing. He disappeared doing some sort of like exploration or something. Let me see here.
Yeah, and like 8 years later or something, that picture popped up, and then of course they're like, well, it could just be like an albino tribesman. But like, what if, for whatever reason, they let him assimilate and like essentially become part of the tribe, and then it's like, if you've been doing that for 8 years, do you want to go back to your life
Yeah,
that
Michael
it was
Rockefeller.
before? Like, I think once you've been doing that for 8 years, that kind of has become your life.
Yeah, it says Michael Rockefeller went missing in New Guinea back in 1961. He's said to have drowned after trying to swim to shore, but the boat capsized. But they're thinking that, did he assimilate into this tribe?
So I just Googled, it's North Sentinel Island in India. It's actually banned from visitors because the tribe gets violent and they try to attack those who visit the island. So it's actually restricted from the Indian government.
It's so weird that there's like places on planet Earth where you can't go because people have, I mean, they don't know any better. They're just trying to protect their own. So, I mean, you can't blame them. But at the same time, like, what bad thing happened to that group of people to where they won't let anybody in for whatever reason? Like, it's just a no admittance policy for anybody. It's just crazy.
Well, I think that's also kind of how just older tribes in general were so territorial,
And it's also saying they're isolated. So, I mean, they don't even know what the world is right now, which they're probably better off.
Yeah.
Dude, what if like realistically their existence is like the movie The Village, just without the terrible ending? But in the same sense, like the ending kind of is real for them because they're like living in, fucking whatever era they're technically living in, but everything going on around them is just, generations beyond where they are. Like, what if that's Earth and we're like the shittiest fucking least civilized planet out there, and like us being on Earth is like that island but in the solar system, and everyone else around is like, look at these fucking morons chucking spears and shit at each other, and like they're just generations and centuries beyond where we are. Like, where does it stop?
Yeah. I don't know. What do you think the cell service is like on that island?
It's probably fantastic.
Yeah.
You know what?
5G.
There's nobody calling you about your fucking car warranty.
That's true.
Well, it's also saying that they're in danger of dying out because they're extremely vulnerable to routine diseases like the common cold or flu. So it makes you wonder. I mean, I wonder if they're just generally happier than us, or
Yeah, it's a good question.
like I wonder, since they live such a organic, like natural life, they have no technology. I wonder if they're just happier just living.
Well, I think a part of being happy is not knowing about the other options. So you're happy with what you have. But I'm going to go ahead and say that they're probably very heavily inbred if it's like a small tribe.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, good point.
Especially on an island. You can't even fucking migrate anywhere. How big is the island, does it say? I thought it was pretty small.
It's an island in the Indian Ocean. I don't know how big it is.
Dude, there's even like a lot of those areas, like towns in West Virginia and shit, that there was a documentary done on it, just how heavily inbred it is. And
That's hot.
yes it is.
Call
It's
me
only gay if
Daddy.
you come.
Can I call you
It's
Daddy?
It's not gay if you're related. Anyway, no, but I mean, like,
You had to go.
think
there.
about that though. I did, but think about that in general, because a huge problem, even in like the Amish society, is like inbreeding. like there's what, like 3 or 4 families. There's Yoder, Miller, whatever the hell the other ones are. But essentially, like inbreeding is such a problem in in that society as a whole. Like, when does it end, or where does it end?
I don't know. Romspringer, maybe.
Yeah, for some of them.
Yeah, I mean, but that's how they decide whether or not they want to, leave the culture. So,
but see, that's kind of what I was saying. Where like, you're viewing it as like outside of where we are, or I'm sorry, from like our point of view, and like, so you're gonna sit there and say, oh well, they don't have this, or they don't have access to this technology or whatever. So, that they got to be really unhappy. They got to be like, struggling. But if you're looking at it from the viewpoint of them, where they don't have like television as a distraction, or whatever the hell, like fashion designer clothes and shit as like a way of grouping people in society, like, would that not then make them eat, like, I would say, I guess, like, everyone's kind of got a leveled playing field? Would you be happier like that? You're doing hard ass labor for sure. And like a lot of the stuff they generally do is like, isn't it just like contributing to the church mostly? That's like one of the main things in Amish society.
I think religion's a big part of their day-to-day life and culture. So,
yeah, I don't know. I mean, but just the main thing I'm trying to say is like, you might think that they're not as happy because they don't have access to some of the things that we have, but they also willingly choose not to. So maybe they're happier because they don't, and we're the dummies.
Yeah, living more simply, does it make you a happier person?
I mean, like, realistically, how much happier are you when you go on vacation? You don't have to worry about your fucking phone going off.
I mean,
Well, I still had to because I got in a car accident.
Well, drive better.
Don't make fun of the dolls, Buddha.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, dude, like, Rady was the one that told me about how he was making fun of Robert the doll, and I was like, I don't want to get on a fucking plane with you in 2 days. So thanks a lot.
Roll the dice, bro.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's pivot out of news. And Buddha, did you have a story tonight, or we want to go to Natalie?
It doesn't matter, either or.
All right, Natalie, why don't you step up to the plate?
Well, I have a couple different stories, but I figured I could just start out with something that's probably familiar to really anyone in our area. Terra Vista Cemetery in Valley View.
Okay.
So, for those that don't know what it is, Terra Vista is a cemetery. It also goes by Old Indian Cemetery, and it's a burial ground of the early settlers in Tinker's Creek, and it also is said to have Indians from the Ottawan tribe buried there. And it's a really creepy place. It's kind of like off the grid. You have to park and walk up this big hill, and then there's an abandoned graveyard. And there's reports that it's haunted, and apparently a dark figure could follow you home. And there's also reports of cult activity. And if you look around at the graves, a lot of them are dated from the early 1800s. A lot of them are pioneer families. And the link that I sent you yesterday, it's for ohioforgotten.com. And that website has a bunch of different places in Ohio that are abandoned that you could go visit, and like abandoned places that are allegedly haunted. And I thought this was interesting. Apparently, back then, they didn't have the benefits of like an undertaker. So when they were buried, it was just a log that was cut and split and then hollowed out, and the body was placed inside. So it's kind of creepy to think that there's just bodies underneath there just laying in like a log. So,
I can tell you right now, that log ain't there no more.
Seriously, yeah. And since it's so, a lot of the graves are from the 1800s, a lot of people died young, obviously, and there's reports of like faint laughter and giggles from children. And I've actually been there a couple different times, and I've had 2 different experiences there. So I went there in high school for the first time. And I was just walking around, taking pictures with my camera. And the one picture that I sent you, if you go to like the right of the picture, there's like a glowing orb coming up from the ground, but there's nothing reflective in that area that would cause it to glow. So I thought that was strange.
Which picture are we talking about? 1899 or 1895?
Let me see. It would be
John, you
18
really dropped the ball. With, oh,
it would
sorry, go
be
ahead.
it would be
I have
18
them ready.
It
No,
would
not,
be 18,
not on that.
It would be 1899.
How did I drop the ball, Buddha?
You dropped the ball because as she was saying that back then they didn't have the benefit of the Undertaker. You could have played his music, but you fucked it up.
Oh. Well, I was listening to the story. So, all right. So there's somebody in this picture here.
The dead man is here.
And
Yeah, that's my. So if you go to the right, if you zoom in, there's that area. There's like a white little glowing ball on the ground to the right.
let me see here. See if I can see that.
What did you take that picture with? A fucking potato? Why is it so blurry?
It was a digital camera.
It was a digital potato.
So yeah, I mean, I do see what you're talking about. There's like a little streak of white coming up out of the ground.
Yeah, and and it's like there's nothing reflective there, so I don't know where that would have came from. So it kind of makes me to me it makes me think it's an orb or some kind of energy manifesting itself.
Orbs are generally orb-shaped.
Yeah, I can't. I zoomed in too far.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I don't know if it's an orb, but I just thought it was weird. And that same day that I was taking those pictures, we found a voodoo doll behind one of the graves. So going back to like the cult activity, there was a voodoo doll, which was pretty fucking creepy. I've never seen one in person, obviously.
Huh.
And the other picture that I sent you, now this one, I don't know. I mean, I could just be reaching. Maybe I'm just really trying to see something. But like in the tree line, to me, it looks like, again, like there's like a white object, it doesn't look like it belongs with like the rest of the tree line. So I don't know. I could be just reaching at this point because I was taking a bunch of pictures that day, but if you go
whereabouts are you seeing it? Because I'm
to the left, like hover over that, see the grave to the far left,
yeah,
and then straight above it, how there's that little like area that's like a whitish. I don't know.
Other way. The clearing, the clearing in the trees, that's the first one from the left.
this right here.
Yeah.
Over one more.
Right.
But you're seeing it on a delay.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
But yeah,
Like I said, I could be just reaching at this point because I thought it was weird. But that whole day, it was just like weird vibes, like finding the voodoo doll. But that was the first time that I went there. And overall, like the feeling of that place is very heavy. And I ended up going back there maybe like a year or two later with my friend Bethany. And this was a weird experience. So I still had a digital camera because I didn't get hip with like iPhones and stuff for, I was kind of late to the game with that. So I had my digital camera. I'm there with Bethany, and I was going back to the grave that we found the voodoo doll at, like back in high school. And that grave is further back by like the clearing of the trees. And my digital camera was completely charged before I went there. Every single time that I was trying to take a picture of this grave, my camera was powering down. And Bethany was getting a very heavy feeling, like she wouldn't go back there with me. I was trying to go back there to keep on getting more pictures, and I kept telling her, my camera keeps powering down. And she was just telling me, maybe we should go, maybe we should go. And then eventually, like, my camera wouldn't turn on at all. So that was really bizarre. So then, it was creepy. We both were just like, okay, let's just leave. So obviously it's a walk back. You have to walk all the way back down that hill. As we're getting ready to leave Terra Vista, we kept on hearing like a jingling. It would kind of sound like the jingling you would hear like if your keys on your lanyard were moving. And so we both looked at each other and we stopped. And then we heard the jingling again. So it wasn't coming from either of us. And when we heard that jingling, we literally ran down that hill. And I know this is going to sound crazy, but we literally were like doing the sign of the cross and saying the Our Father as we're running down the hill because of those reports of that dark figure attaching to you and following you. So we went down the hill, got in her car. We ended up driving down the road to Tinker's Creek, and I was able to turn my camera back on, and it was a full battery. So that to me was definitely a sign of some kind of energy, like negative energy being there. I know that with paranormal stuff, they tend to drain like batteries, like they take energy from you. So whatever was near that grave that I was trying to take a picture of, I feel like it didn't want me to take a picture of that grave, and that's why I kept powering down my camera.
It's weird. You mentioned this. I was looking at stuff to do in Vegas, and there's a museum. Zach Baggins, who does those paranormal shows on, I think, Discovery or whatnot.
Yeah, Ghost Adventures.
Yeah, so he owns
a fucking awful person.
He owns a museum in Las Vegas full of like haunted items or just things that like whatnot. And he has this he has the Devil's Rocking Chair from that Conjuring movie, like but he has the real chair from that exorcism, and you can go see it. I don't know if I'd go in the same room as that thing.
I don't think I would either. I mean, I know a lot of people don't believe in that stuff, but I do believe that things can be attached to objects, which is actually like my next story. But I mean, we'll still talk about this because there's more to talk about. But, especially with anything that has to do with the devil, I wouldn't want to be in the same room as that either. Like if there's like a demon attached to it or anything like that. I just feel like that's territory that I don't even want to try going in.
Buddha can't feed off your energy if you don't have any energy, and that's why they don't fuck with me.
Yeah, the only way to fight this thing is a person with Asperger's.
Now, John, I actually have a question of like your opinion. So sure. I've noticed that, so the first time I went to Terra Vista, I had a digital camera. The second time I had a digital camera, it was powering down. I've noticed, because I took my cell phone, because obviously I don't have a digital camera anymore, I took it to like Mansfield Prison, and I don't feel like you catch things, paranormal things, the way that you would with a digital camera, like with all this new technology. I feel like back in the day when you would just take a digital camera, or even like the ones that you would have to actually develop film, you were more prone to catch stuff. Like, do you think that's because of the way technology is, or do you think entities just are more attracted to the digital? You know what I'm trying to say? It just doesn't seem like
let me answer this one. The reason that you think you catch more shit on older digital cameras is because the resolution is fucking garbage. And 2, you're the person that went to fucking Mansfield with me, and every picture you took, you're like, these are orbs. And I'm like, no, this is a fucking 100-plus-year-old fucking building that's falling apart, and there's plaster dust everywhere. And every time you walk and move, you're kicking up dust, which is then being photographed close to your camera looking like orbs.
No, hold on a second.
You're also the skeptic, though. I mean,
realist.
He's been hanging out with Rady too much.
I mean,
Rady hangs out with me.
I mean, I don't know. I disagree. I disagree only because there's dust everywhere, and like, then how come I'm not capturing dust on my fucking iPhone if I'm in our house, or if I'm, you know what I mean? Like,
Because you're OCD as fuck about cleaning this house. I'm talking
thank
about
you.
I'm talking about like large particles of dust. Like if you were to go and come to a job with me where like somebody's sanding drywall, and they, even if they're done sanding and you like look around the room, you're going to see particles that are substantially bigger than like what you would get off of just a normal house lived in day to day. You know, like even if I sit down in my truck after a dusty ass day, you can see the dust particles, but there's still going to be more of them, and they're going to be bigger than like the very fine particles that you find in a house that's just a day-to-day living.
I think it's honestly, though, the reverse. I think analog signals over digital signals, film versus digital. I mean, can you capture things digitally? Yes, but I think that there's something about old technology, just even the way like tape was recorded and the analog signals that you would get via tape. I think you could bring it in digitally, but I think capturing it was really done. I mean, the best EVPs I've ever heard were done on what they would call the Spiricoms, or recordings off of old tape recorders. And so, could you have seen something out of digital camera? Maybe, but I think honestly, the best way to go about it is the older technology, old radios, tape recorders, photography, that stuff in that manner. I feel like I've seen more stuff evident from that than the digital stuff.
I think a big part of why it's a lot more believable when stuff was older is any of the analog stuff, or, you know, if you're talking film for videos and camera, like that shit can't be faked once it's developed. Whereas, you know, unless you were to bring it into software and digitally edit it from that point on. But like
Right.
digital, man, I mean, dude, there's so much shit now. Like even on your phones, you can make some pretty crazy edits just on a phone. And it's just so hard to believe like anything that comes out now.
Right. And that's why, like I said, I mean, back with that kind of antiquated technology, it was either there or it wasn't. And I think you hit the nail right on the head.
But then you also do have those, you know, like certain kind of distortions that would happen from film, even like old Polaroids, you know, like when, you know, they're taking actual rolls of film. But I mean, how many times growing up did you take a Polaroid and there's an image that's just blurred, and it's because you moved at just the right second, or, you know, like some type of
True.
motion blur or whatever, like,
Or
it's
doing
not-
the Pepper's Ghost effect, you know, things like that, where
what is that?
where you're using reflections to create imagery of like of a ghost.
I don't think I know what that is.
They use that like in haunted houses and stuff.
You mean those ghosts aren't real?
No, actually not. Here, let me look up the scientific explanation for it. But it's
Who's
called-
Pepper? Sergeant Pepper's ghost effect?
No. Pepper's Ghost. Okay, so it's a Pepper's Ghost is an illusion technique used in theater, cinema, and amusement parks, museums, television, and concerts. It's named after the English scientist John Henry Pepper, who began popularizing the effect in a theater demonstration in 1862. This launched an international vogue for ghost-themed plays, which used this novel stage effect during the blah, 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 blah. How does it work? Okay. Here's the history of it. I just want to know how it works. Of course, they're going to give me all the... the illusion is conveyed succinctly through a large glass screen set at an angle catches a reflection from a brightly lit actor in an area hidden from the audience. Not noticing the glass screen, the audience mistakenly perceives this as a reflection, as a ghost figure located among the actors on the main stage. The light of the lighting of the actor in the hidden area can be gradually brightened or dimmed to make the ghost image fade in and out visibly. So that's how they do it. Does that make sense?
No. But I trust you.
Yeah, I mean, they're using mirrors and light to basically create the illusion that something's a ghost and when it's not.
I don't know why they wouldn't just use real ghosts.
All right. Natalie, you want to fire Buddha because he's just being difficult now.
Hey, Scooby-Doo did it. Okay.
This is
Anyway.
why he's like the worst person to talk about paranormal stuff with, because he just has no belief in it whatsoever. And I just feel like there's too much evidence to me showing that there is an afterlife and there is a place where your spirit and your energy goes. I just don't feel like you die and it goes nowhere. And I feel... Oh, but go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, I mean, yes, and I think that there is a lot of credence to what you say, but I've also been listening to a lot of Reddit threads, and one of them was, anyone who's flatlined, please tell your story. And so people are saying that there was very few stories that talked about seeing like the light or family members or whatnot. A lot of what people said was that it was complete darkness and it felt like they were like warm, but like also in like a gel-like state, which then started me like getting me worried because I'm like, okay, well, what does that remind you of? And so like,
Getting ready to be born.
Exactly. And so maybe the energy is from your consciousness is taken to something else.
So
And-
here's... sorry, go on.
No, go ahead.
I would say what's kind of a crazy concept is like how people, when they'll come out and they'll be like, oh, it just everything was dark. Like, well, if you're dead and like, you know, however long your brain is able to survive, or you know what I'm saying? Like if your heart stops and you're dead, like how much longer does your brain linger? Why do you have consciousness of it being dark, but you're supposed to be dead? Like, to me, that's just kind of weird in general. Like, were you really dead? Or is it like your heart stopped, but your brain was conscious long enough before it itself died, but then they brought you back?
Are you confused about the darkness part? Because you could still...
Yeah.
I mean, you hear about people who are in comas and they're still like, you know, they could still hear, like they remember people
Yeah, but those
talking
people
to
are
them.
but those people are alive. They're just in a coma. Like, that's the point that I'm making, is like, why do you still have consciousness if you're clinically dead?
I mean, maybe, I don't know, see, I feel like maybe there's like a process to dying. I mean, maybe those people that saw the light, maybe it was just in the beginning of it. I don't know. I feel like that's just something we're never going to have the answer to. I really hope there's
One
no
day.
I mean, I really hope there's no such thing as reincarnation, though, because, like, honestly, like, who the fuck wants to do this over and over and over? Like, I would rather...
You want to be a ghost running down the halls, kicking people in the nuts? Like, that's what you want to do with the rest of your existence? Or do you want to get another shot at it?
No, I mean, to be completely honest, without bringing, like, I'm not trying to go down, like, the religious road or anything, but I don't want to be trapped. I don't want to be a trapped soul, like, haunting Terra Vista, like, in a fucking loop the rest of my life, you know, because there's different forms of energy that haunt places, and I forget the actual term, but it's like where an energy just repeats itself over and over and over. I don't want that. Like, I would much rather, like, I really hope there's such thing as, like, heaven, where I could just be chilling up there having a good time and not fucking trapped in this house or trapped somewhere else, like, for eternity. That sounds terrible to me. And then reincarnation, I mean, what if you get fucked and you're reincarnated as, like, an animal that gets abused or some shit? Like, there's so many different theories, and I've read that sometimes it depends on how well you do in life. It determines, like, what your next life would be. And I'm just like, I don't know. I kind of like the idea of heaven better. But
Well,
that's
Well,
just
but
me.
then what about what about the animals that are abused now, or the people that have a shitty life now? What if shouldn't they get another shot?
No,
The point is, and one of the things that I've read is that okay, so humans are an experiment from an alien race, right? And their main experiment is the purification of our souls. And so the idea behind it is that if you don't lead a good life, if you don't live a selfish life, if you don't live with envy, hate, or greed, your soul can pass on to the next level, or like a good eternity. And the idea is that if you do live with those things, then you go back and you continue to refine your soul by trying to live without envy, hate, or greed. And that once you've done it the right way, then you can pass to the next level. And so
I've
Sounds like some
actually
L. Ron Hubbard shit.
well, I mean,
I've actually heard of that before. I mean, I was listening to this one podcast where there was a medium on the podcast, and I mean, I think, I mean, there's so much. I know people don't always believe in mediums either, but I do feel like some people might have a gift. I mean, some people are probably full of shit, but this medium was saying the same thing that you were just saying about how there's supposedly like different levels, and if you didn't learn all the lessons you were supposed to learn in this life, like you will be brought back, and you know, you might be given a harder life in order to learn those lessons, and then once you learn everything, then you're like promoted to angel or guardian or something like that. So I
Exactly.
mean, it's kind of a cool way to look at it, but then it makes you wonder, like, damn, I don't want to do this all over again.
Buddha's next life's about to get real hard. He's just gonna have to sit. He's probably gonna end up like working in a call center or something, just listening to people complain. But he won't have like the skills or the knowledge to fix anything, so he's just getting verbal.
It'll just be me working at a repair shop.
It'll be you at Sherwood.
Oh,
All right, cool. What's your other story?
well, here,
So-
let's do mine and then let her do the next one.
I'm sorry.
If you- oh,
I'm the one
is-
running the show. No,
Is
just
this?
kidding.
I had no idea.
Go ahead.
Sorry. No.
Yeah, no.
I'm gonna sit this one out.
No, Buddha,
No.
go.
No, because I'm gonna make an ass of myself, and I'd rather just end it on a. All right, John. Well, I'm glad you got that out of your system. And then, feel better now?
All right,
Everybody
Buddha, what do you got
happy?
tonight?
All right,
That
so do
sounded
you
like
remember?
a fucking demon.
Yeah, we'll keep fucking talking.
Oh,
You're about to
okay.
hear that in your dreams.
You need to shut the fuck up.
All right. Anyway, so do you remember the I don't know how to say it, Dyatlov Pass, that whole
Yes.
incident?
Yes, yes.
So there's actually another one that happened, which is very similar, and it's often kind of compared to it. And it is called well, obviously I'm not fucking prepared. No, it's like the Korovina. It's the same fucking thing. Okay, just bear with me. So, August 2nd, 1993, there's a team of 7 hikers which are being pushed into the wilds of Kamar-Daban mountain range, which is southern Siberia. Southern Siberia's remote and scenic Buryatia region. I'm going to have a hell of a time pronouncing a lot of these words. So they were led by their guide, which was Lyudmila Korovina, and the weather forecast that was supposed to be for this trip was supposed to be clear and calm, for the next couple of days that they're going to be out there. 6 of the hikers that were going on this little hiking trip were actually Korovina's students, and the names are, I'm not even going to pronounce them because I'm going to butcher them. But the plan was to meet up with another hiking group on August 5th. So on August 2nd, they're going out. They're going to meet up with another group on August 5th, which was actually led by Ludmila's daughter, Natalia. And this trip had been planned and prepared for like months. And it was just supposed to be like a normal routine hike. The weather looked good. There was nothing but sun. And they were just split in two parties and then meet up again a couple days later. So for the first leg of the hike, everything went smooth. The weather was great, nice and sunny. The snow was melted. There wasn't really anything to write home about, nothing crazy. So that's on the 2nd. 2 days later, on August 4th, out of nowhere, the weather just goes ape shit. And they start getting like a cold rain, snow is just falling like crazy. And it was to the point where they ended up having to stop their hike and set up a camp just so that they can kind of wait out the weather. And it says, oddly, Corvina would have her team set up camp in an exposed area upon a slope with no tree cover, which is kind of an odd choice for someone that was supposed to be as experienced as she was, that knowing that the weather is so bad, they would set up camp in a place that, had no cover. So it says that night they'd be pummeled by a fierce storm out on the exposed / a rock. And basically they made it through that night. The weather was awful, but, everybody survived and they were kind of ready to keep on moving the next day. On August 5th, Natalia, who was leading the other group, arrives at the area where they were supposed to meet with Ludmila's group, but she was nowhere to be found. So she just kind of assumed, like, okay, the weather was pretty bad. Like, my mom knows what she's doing. That group's in good hands. They're just probably running a little bit behind because they got held up by the weather. So, they just kind of go there. She has these thoughts like, all right, we'll meet up with them. Everything's fine, and just kind of moves along. But Corvina never actually showed up. And it says not until August 10th was any sign of the missing group actually found. So it was only supposed to be from the 2nd to the 5th, and then they would meet up. Now here it is 5 days after the point where they were supposed to meet, and now they're finally starting to find signs of Corvina's group. And it says pretty much on the 10th, kayakers were heading on down the river where they came across a girl on the shore with blood on her clothes. This girl frantically waved them down and pulled onto shore to help her, and as she was obviously in great distress, just kind of beat to shit, like she'd definitely been through the ringer. And it says when they approached her, she began breathlessly and deliriously telling a story that didn't seem to make much sense. So the kayakers helped her get to authorities, and then this is kind of where the story gets pretty wild. So the girl turned out to be Valentina Yudichenko, which she was one of the party of Corvina's original group, and she was actually one of Corvina's students. So, sorry, I lost my spot. So according to her, on the morning of the 5th, as the weather got worse and worse, and it had forced Corvina to make the decision to head back down the mountain rather than continue on to the rendezvous point. So at this point is when it starts getting real wild. So one of the team, Alexander Kryson, begins to inexplicably foam at the mouth and bleed from the nose, eyes, and ears before going into a convulsive fit and collapsing dead. So as Corvina tries to, help him and figure out what's going on, she tells the rest of the group to just keep on moving. And then, she's going to do what she can and then hopefully meet up, or however they have to play it. So as Corvina is, as she's like tending to Alexander, she ends up starting exhibiting the same symptoms, foaming at the mouth, bleeding from her ears and nose, her eyes, and then she ends up convulsing and then falls over and stops moving. So another one, Tatiana, runs to try to help Corvina, and then, rinse and repeat. She starts convulsing, bleeding everywhere. And then instead of falling over dead, she actually, while she's convulsing and bleeding, she crawls over to a rock and repeatedly bashes her head into it. And at this point, everything just kind of goes nuts. and one after one, everyone in the group is just, dropping, clawing at their throats, like bleeding from every orifice, foaming up, foaming at the mouth, vomiting blood, you could tell that they were in like extreme pain, and just with everything going on, they didn't really know what to do. So they're kind of just like clutching at their throat, like ripping their clothes off because they really have no idea what's going on. So, as all of this stuff happens, Valentina just kind of panics and just books it down the mountain, has whatever few supplies that she has on her, and just runs and runs basically until she can't run anymore. And she ended up wandering through the wilderness for several days, kind of just, in a trance, and just kind of ends up on this riverbank. And from that point is where the kayakers end up finding her. So the entire party dies with the exception of Valentina, who is the one to just, tell the story. So as they're here, like as she's telling this story to authorities, like everyone's like, man, like this is kind of crazy. The story seems a bit far-fetched. We're going to check this out. So once they go up and retrieve the bodies, it says, despite the mysterious symptoms described by Valentina, all of them, they were all determined to have died from hypothermia, with the exception of Ludmila, who had suffered a heart attack. They also strangely found to have had bruising of the lungs and protein deficiencies, despite the fact that they had all been well fed. And as far as the authorities are concerned, this is a case closed. The deaths seem to be accidental. It's just 6 very healthy, experienced people dropped dead within a matter of minutes from frothing of the mouths, bleeding, and bashing heads into the rocks. And they basically declared it as hypothermia. Now, the question is, why was Valentina the only one that didn't become affected by whatever happens? Is it, she maybe wasn't exposed because she wasn't near the other bodies, she just ran away, or, was it maybe she had something else to do with it? And there's a couple of theories that are thrown out about it, and it says one is that they stumbled across something that they weren't supposed to see and were killed by the Russian military. But if that was the case, why like the side effects? Like, you think if they were stumbled across any military, they would just shoot him and be done with it. And why would Valentina be spared? The other theory is it could have been some sort of like chemical or biological weapons testing site that they were trying out, and they just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Or maybe it was some type of residual, something left over from a chemical weapon test that they were trying. The third theory would be that they ended up actually coming across like a radioactive dumping ground. But, once again, why was Valentina the only one to survive? Which I'm not sure on how quickly radiation poisoning will affect you, but I know it just depends on the level. But we actually did
quick.
It is quick, but it depends on the level.
Right.
But we actually did work for this guy that used to work on like a nuclear sub, and he was like showing us pictures of everything in the sub, and like everything is kept in water so that it like stays cool. And I'm sure that there's more to it, but this is like him explaining it to a dummy so that I understand. But he basically was like, if this stuff ever fails, you have minutes before the entire crew is just wiped out from radiation poisoning, which is pretty wild.
What if they came across like some sort of alien species or alien craft that was emanating some sort of radioactive material?
Yeah, I mean, there's no answer. The another theory would have been that they drank contaminated water, or like bad mushrooms, or like they just ate something,
some dank buds
that potentially yeah, that maybe she didn't eat. She was a vegan, so she didn't eat that stuff. But
what if she poisoned them?
Well, that's the other thing is, evidently she once she like kind of told this story, she just refused to talk about it. So the fact that like you're the only survivor, and you're going to sit there and say, well, and I'm clearly speculating, but you're the only survivor, and you're like, all these people were bleeding from every orifice, and then they started just bashing their heads into the rocks. Like, what if like you were, what if you were bashing each person's head into the rocks? What if you poisoned everyone else and you're the only one that survived because you did the poisoning? Like, there's so much where they were just kind of like, wiping my hands of this. 6 people hypothermia sounds about right.
I mean, that doesn't even make sense. I mean, anybody who's watched the ID channel or Dateline, that literally sounds like she poisoned them.
No, yeah, I'm with you on that. But I think if that's not the case, I would venture to say that that it's like a chemical warfare, chemical weapon.
So we're talking the 90s. So what would have been the big thing happening in the 90s?
Well,
was that the first Iraq war, or was that 80s?
Well, that was late 80s. You're talking about Desert Storm?
Yeah.
I think it was
late
somewhere
80s.
between 89 and 91. George Bush was in office, so.
Okay. So, but the point that I'm making is, like, there's always some type of skirmish, some type of something going on with everyone. And we all know that, like, Russia's not one to fuck around. So, I mean, even in times where there is no war, like, they're still always testing weapons and shit.
January 91, Desert Storm.
Okay. So, what was after Desert Storm? Nothing. That was, like, the most major until 2001, right?
Yeah, and I mean, that Desert Storm was like 3 days or something like that. They went in there and basically kicked ass and got out.
But it's like, realistically, how long was shit still going on before and after? That's just the shit you heard about, you know?
Sorry. 1 month, 1 week, and 4 days.
Okay. But still, the point that I'm making is, like, just because there's nothing going on doesn't mean you're not testing weapons. I mean, the U.S. is fucking doing it, clearly. So
yeah,
it just
but biological weapons? There's...
Dude, if you really think that the U.S. isn't testing any bioweapons, I got a bridge I'll sell you.
Yeah, but how does that stuff not get out? I mean, it's all that stuff's practically invisible. You know what I mean?
To not go down this rabbit hole, I'll move on from that. But yes, it's just one of those things where, like, what if it was something that was tested and say it wasn't a bioweapon, but it was, well, I guess it couldn't be a bomb because you would see that shit. I don't know. I don't know. I don't have an answer for you. But it's just kind of a wild story that, like, everybody was bleeding out everywhere and bashing their own fucking brains out, allegedly. And then this chick's like, I don't know what happened. See you later.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it's just kind of wild. But it's one of those, like, unexplained where the Dyatlov Pass incident was kind of like, man, they got some serious bruising. Like, they were hit by a car, but I don't know.
Yeah. Huh. All right.
I don't know.
I mean, like I said, to me, it's either when you're talking about that kind of level of, I don't know, like, for lack of a better word, just leaking out and, expelling all of those kinds of bodily fluids, just sounds chemical in nature. And so it was either chemical warfare or poisoning, something done on a chemical level. So,
yeah. I don't
all
know.
Right. Natalie, what do you got?
For my next story, so it has to do with a haunted porcelain doll that I had. So I guess so we're going back to the paranormal stuff here. So when you guys, I don't know, well, I know Buddha, you don't have any, like, living grandparents, but John, like, when your grandparents, I think, are yours still around or yours gone?
I have one of 4 left.
So when you were younger, did you have, like, a period of time where, like, you were getting just weird gifts from your grandparents, like when you were at that weird age where you weren't getting toys, but they didn't want to just give you money for Christmas?
Not really. I mean,
Then my then my grandma's just fucking weird then because because I was in it was like a weird I had to have been, I don't even remember the age. I wasn't in high school, but I wasn't a little kid either. But my grandma, she's obsessed with QVC, and she was always one of those people. Oh, John, are you still there?
I'm here.
Oh, your microphone, it like cut out on my end, so I didn't know if I like lost everything. But anyway, she's obsessed with QVC, and she was always one of those people that was like, oh, this is going to be a collector's item one day. So she would do that with Beanie Babies, like anything. So for some reason, she gave me and my cousin, she bought this porcelain doll from QVC that sings a prayer. So it stands over this like little bed. It's really fucking weird. It stands over this little bed, and then if you press a button, it sings this prayer for peace, and the doll will actually move and like bow its head up and down and sing this prayer. And for some reason, she was like, oh, save this, it'll be worth money one day. And of course, I'm thinking, why the hell would you even buy this for me? So I had the doll on display, and it was more so on display out of guilt because I'm like, oh, like this was a gift, blah, blah, blah. And I just remember the vibe in my room, like it changed. It felt heavy. It always felt like somebody was watching me. And it never really, I remember when I first had the doll, like the eyes were really creepy. It always looked like it was like following you around the room. And I started to have these weird experiences in my room once the doll was in there. So the first one that I remember, I was laying in bed, and it felt like I've never had a cat, but it felt like a cat walking across my, like the legs of my bed, like across my legs when I was laying in bed. And it was enough to startle me when I was laying there. And I was like, okay, that's weird. Maybe I was just imagining things, whatever. But then as time went on, things started to progress, and I had sleep paralysis for the first time ever. And the only time that I've ever had sleep paralysis is when that doll was in my room. And I remember the first time it happened, I don't know if like you guys have ever had it, but you're literally paralyzed. You wake up and it's like you can't move your arms, you can't speak. And it's almost like it takes a few minutes to like gain enough consciousness to like move your body. So that would happen a couple different times. And I just remember thinking, okay, like I was still trying to tell myself that it had nothing to do with the doll, that it was just all in my head, maybe that was just a fluke, blah, blah, blah. And then that started to escalate. So I started to get the sleep paralysis. I wouldn't say it definitely wasn't every night. I would say it was at least once every few weeks. And
keep your eye on the channel real quick if you have it still open. I'm going to cut over. I think I found it online. Tell me if this is it.
Okay.
Should be coming over here any second now. I'm not sure, but it's like is there like a little bed that comes along with it too? Yeah. And the link that I sent you yesterday, I was able to find a link to that's the doll, but I had the boy version of the doll, but okay. That's the exact same one. And you would press a button, and I sent you a link yesterday to this video that actually shows, like, if you fast forward to 30 seconds on that video, it'll sing the prayer, and just so you guys can hear and see how creepy it was. Here real quick. But so okay. Let's see. How did you find it online? Did you just kind of search for it? I searched for my prayer for peace doll, and then I found that video. It's like
it looked like a video from somebody's Facebook, like they were repairing the doll. But like I said, if you fast forward to 30 seconds on that video, it'll just show the whole prayer, or sing the whole prayer.
Let's see. Oh, yeah. It's kind of weird. Let me see if I can get it over here. She said 30 seconds in.
Yeah.
All right, let me go back here.
I still get creeped out hearing this stupid song.
This is my prayer for peace. I give thanks for all the wonders for the world and every
That's so fucking weird.
for all the God
Isn't that fucking creepy?
which is more than I can say. Bless my family and friends. I pray for them each night as I go through.
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
So, yeah, and then you see how the doll just moves up and down. So it's creepy. So, like I said, it started out where I felt like something move across my legs the one night, and then it escalated to sleep paralysis. And then the sleep paralysis started to happen on a regular basis to the point where I wouldn't sleep facing where the doll was in the room. I would sleep facing away. And then from there, that escalated. This is when I started to get scared. I remember I woke up with sleep paralysis. I never saw any kind of like figure during the sleep paralysis. I know some people claim to see like a figure hovering over them or like a dark shadow in the corner. I never saw that. But I remember I was laying on my back and I woke up and I couldn't move, and it literally felt like my tongue was in the back of my throat, like blocking my airway. Like it felt like I couldn't breathe, and I was panicking. And I remember glancing in the direction of the doll because my gut feeling was telling me like this has something to do with this fucking doll, because I've never had this happen before. So then I finally was able to move. I was able to breathe, and I sat up, and, you know, I still was like, what, you know, I feel like when these things happen, a lot of people are like, no, there's no way that a doll is making this happen. You know, you're trying to justify it, and, you know, so that's what I was doing. So that happened. I was scared, but I was like, okay, maybe this has to be something just going on with me. But then it happened a couple more times where I woke up and I couldn't breathe. And it was to the point where I wouldn't fall asleep facing the doll, and I wouldn't fall asleep on my back either, because I would be afraid I'd wake up and my tongue would be like blocking my airway. So I would only sleep on my one side. And the final straw that I couldn't take it anymore. I was laying in bed on that only side that I would lay on, and I literally felt something pick up like a piece of my hair. It was very childlike, like somebody picked up a strand of my hair or a little chunk of my hair and gently like let it fall back down on my face. And my hair actually fell back down on my face enough where I reacted, and I pulled the blanket over myself, and I was pretty much like frozen, thinking like, what the fuck? And after that happened that night, I managed to fall asleep with the blanket over my head. And then after that night, I got rid of the doll. I threw it out. I was like, you know what? I don't care if this was a gift. I don't care if it's a stupid collector's item. Like, I'm getting rid of it. I threw it out, and I never, ever experienced sleep paralysis after that. The whole like energy in my room felt normal again, and I never had any kind of experience again with something like touching my hair or anything like that. So I don't know if there was I believe something was attached to that doll. I don't know if it was good or evil. I mean, like I said, the playing with the hair kind of felt childlike to me. But then why was I waking up and not being able to breathe and not being able to move? That to me, that seems like an evil spirit. So I don't really know what to think of that. And I know I probably sound crazy saying all of this, but it was just a really creepy experience that only happened when that thing was in my room.
Yeah, I mean, do you think that maybe your mind just went to that as a way to justify it?
I mean, it made me wonder, but the only reason that I feel like it had to do with the doll is because it never happened again. Like, I could see if I had sleep paralysis all my life or if I continued on to have it, but it was only with that doll in the room.
Yeah, I've never had, I think I've experienced sleep paralysis maybe once or twice, but I never really could tie it to like an object. What about you, Buddha?
Yeah, we've talked about this before. Remember with the old woman sitting next to me?
No.
Motherfucker, I have told this story like 3 times on this show alone.
I don't remember.
The brief rundown was I came home from the gym super tired and I passed out on the bed. Well, I
was
laid
this
down
that time you were talking about like the woman next to you?
Yeah, like 30 seconds ago when I just said the old woman next to me.
No,
Yeah,
I'm
it's that time.
I'm just.
Was this at our house?
Yeah, you were there.
What
Dude,
the-
neither
what-
one of you motherfuckers listen to this show. Am I the only one? You're involved in both of those.
So this happened at our house, you're saying?
Yes, I was trying
my
to
God.
scream for you.
Oh my God, I actually I actually do remember that now, and it's, you know, for anyone who's out there listening, our house, I believe there was the old woman that used to live here. I think her spirit was still trapped here for a little while until
Oh yeah, now I remember this.
Yeah, until she finally saw the light, because, you know, obviously doing construction like stirs up spirit activity. And when Buddha was renovating everything, there was a lot of things going on. And, you know, not to cut you off with your cut you off. Oh, sorry, I think it happened again.
Buddha, at least you left her Toto alone.
Yes.
I mean, at least her throne still remains. But dude, I mean, yeah, it's crazy. Like when you bought that house, and this was before, this is probably about a year before he met you, Natalie. Probably, would you say? Or
He actually, well, he bought it.
I
bought it like.
I
Go on.
closed in October, got the keys in December, so it had been like 6 months. We were together like 6 months at that point.
Yeah, because
But it was still like very new.
Yeah, because both you moved into your house 2 months after I moved into mine. I remember, and not even like Buddha got the keys, and 2 hours later, all the walls were destroyed in the basement. But
Yeah.
I remember when Buddha bought the house, and I'm like, "What the fuck did you just buy?" Like,
Right.
But Buddha has this like ability to see fourth dimensionally and see into the future of what something could be. And so, I mean, yeah, I was showing somebody the other day the picture of the basement before the setup that you have now.
It doesn't even look like the same house.
No, and well, it's like, it's crazy to think like, yeah, I mean, even like the floors and everything, but yeah, I mean, she had lived in that house a certain way for so long. And did she die in the house? Did they tell you that?
No,
Buddha?
she did not.
Oh,
So-
thank God. I was actually wondering that too, but I mean, her spirit was clearly still here, and you renovating everything stirred things up for a little while. And I just remember I would come over when he would be like renovating things. Like, he wasn't moved in yet, but he was just getting things ready, and I would
That was
just
a very sad time in his life.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he was depressed. But I like Buddha, I'm sure you remember this, but we were hanging out, and the broom, we left it in the hallway because you were coming back the next day. And then you came back the next day, and I wasn't there. I was at my parents' house, and I remember you texted me and you were like, "Did you put the broom away?" And I was like, "No." And then remember the broom was you found the broom in the closet, and we had both just left it there at like 11:30 at night the night before in the hallway. So something moved it.
And I think it was. I wasn't cleaning up. I wasn't cleaning up shit ever at this house when I was working on it. It was fucking trashed.
Yeah, that was an interesting time. But yeah, no, it's weird too. Like I remember, so my grandfather died in his home, and I moved in there about a year after that had happened. Almost, it was just over a year, and it was weird because my entire life I had gone to that house, and there was always a bustle of activity. You know, when my grandmother was alive, and then after she passed away, my grandfather. So there was always somebody else in that house other than me. And so I remember when I moved in there, my parents helped me with the last car full, and they left. And I just sat there for a second, and I said, this is the first time I've ever been alone in this house by myself. And it kind of like weirded me out. But then I felt like this odd peace come over me where I was like, if my grandparents were present there metaphysically, I didn't really have anything to worry about because, you know, I was part of their family. I was one of their own. So if they were there to watch over me. And so it was kind of like but it did cross my mind there for a minute. I'm like, oh my God, I'm here in the place that I've come to all my life where there's always been somebody else here, and where my grandfather passed away in the other room. And it was just weird. It was surreal. Kind of like, not on the same level, but like how Gary had mentioned, you know, he moved the trailer that he had grew up in, and he was so used to looking out that window and seeing something else, and now he's looking out the same window and seeing something totally different, that it kind of like warps your mind in a certain way. So I don't know.
Well, that actually reminds me of when my grandpa passed away. My grandma has those lamps where you can like tap the base of it and it would turn on. Mm-hmm. So it's like and after he passed away, there was a couple different times where, because they didn't sleep in the same bed. It must be like an old person thing, but he, like in his bedroom, the light would turn on, and I mean, she told me she wasn't scared or anything like that. She would just be like, oh, hi, Ed, I know you're here. And then she would just tap it and turn it back off. But like, to me, that's not creepy or scary. I remember when she told me that, it was really cool. And like you said, comforting. Cause I'm like, wow, like my grandpa it only happened like within the first week or two that he passed. And I'm like, oh, that's actually really sweet. It's like he was checking in on her to be like, hey, I'm here. Like, you're not alone, and I mean, I know that I do believe that spirits can draw up energy to do things like that. I mean, you hear it all the time, especially when somebody passes away. It's like they check on their loved ones before crossing over to the other side.
When my dad died, like when my mom would take a shower, he would turn off the hot water so that, you would just get hit with that shock of cold.
To get you out of the shower or just to mess with you? Just
to mess with you. Like, he would turn off the hot water, and then somebody would yell, and then he'd turn it back on. Just like, I'm messing with you, like, kind of thing. I remember my mom told me that, like, after my dad died, like, right after, she was taking a shower, and then, like, all the hot water just was gone, and then it came back on in, like, another second. You never know. I mean, it could be a fluke, but it's still one of those things where I think if it gives you comfort, then go with it.
How did you feel about it?
I was a little kid, so, I mean...
How do you feel about it now?
My logical side of my brain goes, well, this could have happened to stop the hot water.
Yeah. But do you think that's what it was?
I mean, I'm not a plumber, so I don't have like a...
Stop trying to make sense of it and just tell me how you feel about it.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I would say that
that's literally like,
if you want to take that as a sign and it makes you feel...
I'm not asking... You're talking back to me. I'm asking you. How do you feel about it?
John, welcome welcome to my life. This is him trying to talk about feelings.
All right, fair enough.
No, it's just, I mean, like, okay, the best way that I can put it is, like, if that was to happen to me and it was a similar circumstance, that's not the first place my mind would go.
All right,
But
fair enough.
But if that is something that you two shared and that's the first place your mind goes and it gives you comfort and it makes you feel better, then by all means believe it. You know, I mean, I'm not going to tell you no and take away your fucking fun. I think if it makes you feel better about the situation, then maybe it is the small things that matter.
How do you
So
feel?
do you?
Go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry. I was just gonna say. So do you really feel like there's just nothing? Like you're gonna just die, and you're gonna have no connection to the world, no connection to like the people you love. You're just gonna be nothing but dirt in the ground.
Not at all. I've never once said that. I've always said that I believe that like people are made up of like a type of energy, whereas like I wholeheartedly believe that hauntings are real and there are ghosts or at least some type of form of energy, collection of energy that is capable of interacting with us. I just don't think you're fucking watching it on sci-fi.
Come on,
You know.
Ghost.
Yeah, like I don't think Zach fucking Baggins is out there partying with some fucking ghost. But no, I mean,
But you-
I absolutely believe that. Like, well, there is. Yeah, I don't really know how to explain it. Like, I think resurrection or reincarnation makes more sense than like you just die and now you're in a fucking hole in the ground. I mean, and there's credible stories of kids that are like, hey, I don't know why I'm remembering these things, but you know, I was this was my name, blah blah blah, and then like when that stuff gets looked up, it's right. I was actually going to do a story on one, maybe I still will, but the problem is like so much of that stuff, you know, could easily be faked, for one, and two, like you generally forget your earliest memories, you know, within the first couple of years anyway. Like I don't remember shit from when I was probably before 5.
Well, I don't think you ever, just going back, you never said the rest of your story about your sleep paralysis when you saw that old woman.
No, I have like 3 times.
You have? Well, say it
Yes.
again for the viewers.
They've all heard it 3 times because I've said it on this show like 3 times.
Well,
And apparently
Well,
you
whatever.
don't listen.
no, I remember it. I felt like we cut you off, so.
No, I mean, basically it just, this old woman was like sitting next to me and I was like screaming, trying to scream, but you know, you can't. And then she didn't do anything. She just sat there. But, you know, eventually I was able to snap out of it. But it's just, it's super
Do
weird
you-
because I've had sleep paralysis like multiple times, but there's only been a handful of times. And it's been the most recent times, which, I mean, the last time I had it was probably like a year ago, 2 years ago. But the most recent of the times that I had it, it started involving other people.
See, I've only ever had it when that stupid doll was in my room, and thank God I never saw any kind of figure, because I feel like I would have just like shit myself. But, you know, what do you mean by other people? Like you'd see other people in the room?
Like I'm not alone. It's never anybody I know, but
What if you have a third eye? What if you can what if
yeah, my
you
brown
can...
eye.
All right.
I knew you were going to say something like that. Well, whatever.
All right. Well, in that note, it's 9:38. We've gone for an hour and a half, and I think we can begin to close this one out for tonight. Do you guys agree?
Yeah, this is fun. I really
Yeah.
enjoyed it.
All right. Well, let's see here. I've got to turn this back up here while it's going. All right. Well, Natalie, thank you for giving us your
I'd love
Thursday
to be
night.
on again and talk about ghost stuff.
I think tonight was the big theme was ghosts and paranormal tonight. So I got to go back and retag all these videos. So, next week, we'll be back Thursday night, 8 p.m., unless we have some sort of technical difficulty. Nagel said he might be free to do another one. Rob, I'm going to reach out to Bean again, too. I'm going to try and reach out to some other people, too, get some more people in. But, yeah, we'll definitely try to have you on again while we are still in the midst of a Dan Rady sabbatical. So I'm going to close this one out. So, for Dan Rady...
Did you end up talking to my brother about it?
We mentioned it to him, so
This was fun. Thanks for having me on.
cool. Well, for Steve Gibson, Rob Tagg, Gary Nagel, Nick Riddle, Natalie Gibson, Bob Tobakash, Alex Bazinski, Joe Barry, Jason Markovitz, Joe Bednicki, Michael Paleo. This is John Budzinski from The Mistake on the Lake, deep within the Great American Rust Belt, somewhere out there. Say goodnight, Buddha.
Good night, Buddha.